The battlefield was eerily silent. Commander Rhea offered knelt in the dust, her fingers brushing the earth beneath her, feeling the vibrations of the distant explosions. The battle on Armaris Prime had been brutal, but the sudden stillness in the air felt unnatural. Something was wrong. The enemy had fallen back too easily, almost as if they were luring her into a trap. "Commander," a voice crackled over her communicator. It was Lieutenant Aiden Calloway, his voice filled with the same suspicion that had been gnawing at Rhea all day. "We've secured the perimeter, but something doesn't feel right. No sign of the main force." Rhea stood, dusting off her fatigues. She studied the horizon, where the once vibrant red and orange skies of the planet now simmered under a pall of smoke. "I know," she replied, her voice steady but tinged with unease. "Stay sharp. I'll be there in a moment." As she walked toward the center of the encampment, her boots crunching on the scorched earth, she caught sight of Corporal Nadia Ruiz tending to an injured soldier. Nadia's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the chaos around her. The veteran's sharp eyes flicked up when Rhea approached, giving a small nod of acknowledgement. "We're in the clear for now," Nadia said, wiping blood from her hands with a rag. "But I don't like how quiet it is." "You feel it too, don't you?" "I do," Rhea admitted. "The enemy's not retreating, they're regrouping. They'll be back. And when they come, they'll be ready for us." Aiden joined them then, his young face tense, eyes scanning the horizon. He was new to the unit, still learning the ropes, but his instincts were sharp. "Intel suggests the enemy's main force is somewhere north of here," he said, pointing toward a range of jagged mountains in the distance. "We need to make a move before they can mount a counteroffensive." Rhea nodded, her thoughts already racing. "We'll move out at dusk. No time to waste." The quiet unease gnawed at her. Her soldiers were exhausted, battered from the day's fighting. She had seen too many missions like this, strategic wins, followed by sudden ambushes, followed by more dead bodies than she cared to count. But something about this felt different. The alien forces they had been fighting were brutal and relentless, but they weren't stupid. They didn't back off unless they had something bigger planned. As night fell and the air grew cold, Rhea gathered her troops in the dim light of a flickering campfire. The team was weary, their faces grim, but they understood the urgency. They had one shot at getting ahead of the enemy. "This is our fight now," Rhea began, her voice carrying across the group. "We don't know how long we have before the counteroffensive hits. So we'll use their tactics against them. We know this planet, its terrain. We'll outthink them, outmaneuver them. If they want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." Aiden met her gaze, his uncertainty fading as Rhea's confidence washed over him. He had seen commanders crumble under pressure, but not her. Rhea offered had earned her reputation, not just through strategy but through sheer willpower. Her words weren't just commands, they were promises. Nadia stood at attention, her arms folded across her chest. "So we strike first. We take the fight to them before they can regroup." "Exactly," Rhea affirmed, her eyes sharp as she surveyed her soldiers. "We move fast, we hit hard, and we vanish before they know what hit them." Aiden nodded, his hands tightening around his weapon. "We'll need to use the mining tunnels to move undetected." "I'll handle the logistics," Nadia said, already moving to coordinate the preparations. "We'll be ready to move out in an hour." The plan was set. As Rhea watched her team prepare, she felt a pang of worry. This was the kind of operation that either made or broke a unit. One wrong move, one misstep, and it could all fall apart. She couldn't afford to lose anyone, not again. But there was no time to second guess. The enemy wasn't waiting for them to be ready. The decision was made, and now all she could do was ensure her people survived the coming storm. "Aiden," she said, pulling the young officer aside. "Stay focused. If anything goes wrong, I'll need you to keep your head. You're more than ready for this, but trust your instincts." He met her gaze, his expression serious. "Understood, Commander." With that, they moved into position. As Rhea took her place at the front of the unit, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The real battle was about to begin, and this time, it wasn't just about survival, it was about proving that humanity could conquer the impossible. The silence of the battlefield hung heavy as they prepared for what lay ahead. And with it, Rhea felt the weight of the future pressing down upon her. The sun dipped beneath the jagged mountains, casting long shadows across the desolate landscape of Armaris Prime. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burning debris, and the ground was littered with the remnants of what had been a fierce battle. Commander Rhea Offord stood at the head of her team, her eyes scanning the horizon, her mind sharp despite the weariness that tugged at her body. The quiet was unnerving, a stillness that didn't belong in the aftermath of a fierce fight. "We're too exposed here," Lieutenant Aidan Calloway said, his voice laced with frustration. He stood by Rhea's side, his young face pale from the day's exhaustion, but his gaze never wavered. He was still adapting to the brutal nature of war, but his instincts had proven reliable thus far. Rhea nodded, her gaze narrowing. "We're not staying here long. They'll come for us soon enough." The enemy, the Zalons, had been pushed back earlier in the day, but it wasn't like them to give up so easily. Rhea knew better than anyone that a regrouping force was often more dangerous than the initial wave. She didn't need to say it aloud for Aidan and the others to understand. They all felt the same tension, the prickling sense of impending doom that gnawed at their nerves. Corporal Nadia Ruiz, ever the pragmatist, spoke up from behind them. "We've fortified the camp as much as we can, Commander, but this isn't a position that's going to hold for long. I suggest we move into the mining tunnels before they can overwhelm us." Rhea considered the option for a moment. Nadia was right. The tunnels offered cover, a chance to regroup and fight on their terms. But there was no telling how many Zalons had regrouped, or if they had already found their way into the underground networks. Every move felt like a gamble. "Prepare the team," Rhea ordered. "We're moving out in 15 minutes. Stay alert. If they're setting a trap, we walk straight into it. But we don't have much choice." The soldiers began to gather their gear, a grim quiet settling over them. The weight of what was coming, the uncertainty, the fear, hung heavy in the air. They all knew the risks, but none of them spoke of it. There were no assurances, no promises that they'd survive the next assault. They'd face whatever came, as they always had. As Rhea moved among the troops, checking their readiness, she caught Aidan's eye. He looked at her, his expression a mixture of determination and doubt. "You really think we can win this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rhea met his gaze, her steely resolve reflected in her eyes. "We're not here to win. We're here to survive. If we do that, we've already won." Aidan hesitated, the weight of her words sinking in. He didn't know if it was the right answer, but he trusted her. Rhea had seen things on the battlefield that had shattered lesser commanders. She wasn't just leading them, she was keeping them alive. And right now, that was all they could hope for. As the squad moved toward the entrance to the tunnels, Rhea's mind raced through every possible scenario. There was a distinct possibility they were walking into a trap, but they couldn't afford to wait in the open. The risk of being caught in the open, with no cover, was far greater than the unknown of what lay ahead in the tunnels. The air in the narrow passageways was thick, a suffocating chill that settled in their lungs. The hum of the planet's still active mining equipment echoed through the tunnels, a constant reminder of how many forces had once worked to extract the precious minerals from this desolate planet. Now, it would serve as the backdrop for a different kind of war. Nadia led the group, her movements swift and precise. She had spent years in similar conditions, always calm under pressure. Her tactical mind was invaluable in times like these. Aidan followed closely behind Rhea, his eyes scanning every shadow, every crevice in the tunnel. The claustrophobic darkness made his senses feel heightened, every sound amplified. His mind was racing, he wasn't sure how much longer they could keep up the illusion of control. "They're coming," Aidan muttered, breaking the tense silence. He could feel it, an almost palpable presence, an unnatural stillness in the air as though the enemy were lurking just beyond the reach of their senses. Rhea held up her hand, signaling for everyone to halt. "Stay quiet. Don't move unless I give the order." The seconds stretched into eternity. Ria's eyes flicked between Aiden and Nadia, both alert, waiting for a signal that would come too late. Then, the low rumble of engines reached their ears, and a tremor shook the tunnel. A shadow flickered at the tunnel's mouth. The Zalons had arrived. "They're here," Nadia said, voice steady, but her eyes flashed with the readiness of a soldier who had seen death up close too many times. Ria inhaled sharply. This was it, the moment they'd been waiting for. With a swift motion, she raised her weapon and signaled the team to prepare. A distant, eerie howl echoed down the tunnel. The Zalons were coming, and they were not alone. The echo of footsteps reverberated through the narrow mining tunnels, a rhythmic sound that felt too loud in the oppressive silence. The team was deep underground now, the walls closing in around them, but Commander Ria offered didn't flinch. She had lived through worse. Her fingers tightened around the grip of her weapon, each muscle in her body wound tight like a coiled spring. She was waiting for something to break the silence, for the enemy to show themselves. "Move out," she commanded quietly. Her voice cut through the stillness, a sharp contrast to the surrounding darkness. Her team responded immediately, slipping deeper into the tunnel system, their footsteps soft but purposeful. Aiden followed closely behind, his eyes flicking nervously to the shadows. He had barely gotten used to the noise of the battlefield above ground, but this eerie silence, was something else entirely. He could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in on him, each breath coming faster as the air grew colder. The tunnels, once used to mine precious ores, had become a labyrinth of death. Ahead of him, Nadia moved with practiced ease, her steps quiet, her expression focused. She was the veteran of the group, the one with the experience and the calm under pressure. Aiden could see the way her eyes scanned every corner, every crack in the walls, as if the darkness itself might hide something dangerous. She was sharp. Too sharp. That was both comforting and unsettling. "Stay close," Ria's voice rang out again, low but firm. "We don't know how many they've brought with them, but we're not getting caught in a choke point." Aiden nodded, swallowing his nerves. He had been through enough battle simulations to know the risks, but this was different. The Zalons weren't like anything he had encountered before, strange, ruthless, and relentless. They moved in packs, and the way they fought was coordinated in ways that defied human logic. They understood the art of war as if it was second nature. As the team advanced deeper into the tunnels, the walls narrowed even further, the air thick and close. The sound of their footsteps had disappeared entirely, leaving only the sharp, shallow breaths of soldiers trying to stay undetected. Ria led them to a junction, the sharp turn of the tunnel making it impossible to see what lay ahead. She paused, raising her hand for them to stop. "Listen," she murmured. The soldiers went still, straining to hear any sound that might give away the enemy's position. The faintest hum. Aiden's heart skipped a beat. The sound was unmistakable. The Zalons had deployed their scouts. "They're on the move," Ria whispered, her voice low and urgent. "They found us." Without warning, the silence shattered as a loud crack echoed through the tunnel. Aiden whipped around, his pulse racing. A blast of heat slammed against his back, and the stench of burning metal filled the air. "Damn it!" Nadia cursed under her breath, dropping to a crouch and pulling her weapon into position. "They've set a trap. Move, now!" Ria acted instantly, grabbing Aiden by the arm and pulling him forward. "Get to the access shaft. Now!" Aiden's mind spun, trying to process everything that was happening. The Zalons were closing in faster than he had anticipated, their methodical hunt a well-rehearsed strategy. They weren't rushing, but their movements were deliberate. He could almost feel the weight of their eyes, calculating, tracking. Nadia was already ahead of them, moving with the precision of someone who had seen it all before. Her eyes were locked on the path ahead, her face a mask of concentration. She was leading them to safety, but Aiden couldn't shake the feeling that the true danger wasn't the enemy's weapons, it was their sheer adaptability. The tunnel's walls began to shake. The ground beneath them rumbled, and a deep, vibrating growl filled the air. It was the Zaylon's war machines, the monstrous, insectoid creatures that could tunnel through the earth with ease. Aiden's blood turned cold. "Run!" Rhea barked, urging them forward. The group sprinted through the narrow passage, the walls seeming to close in with each step. The rumbling intensified, and the ground trembled as the Zaylon's machines bore down on them from behind. Aiden's breath came in ragged gasps as he pushed himself harder, his legs burning with the effort. "We're almost there," Nadia shouted, glancing over her shoulder. "Keep moving." A sudden explosion shook the tunnel, sending debris flying. The air became thick with dust and smoke. Aiden's chest constricted as he gasped for breath, struggling to see through the haze. He felt the heat from the explosion on his skin and heard the screams of soldiers in the distance, but there was no time to stop. No time to think. He kept running, his vision blurring, adrenaline pounding in his veins. Rhea's voice cut through the chaos. "Aiden! Get up front! Now!" He pushed harder, his mind racing. There was no turning back now. The only way out was forward. Then, as quickly as it had started, the shaking stopped. The ground grew still, eerily so, and the rumble of the Zaylon's machines faded into the distance. They were in the clear. For now. But Rhea's expression didn't relax. She knew they were only moments away from facing their enemy in the most dangerous way possible. The trap had been sprung. And now, they would see if humanity's elite warriors could outsmart the Zaylons once again. The air was thick with tension as the team huddled inside the dark, cold recesses of the abandoned mining shaft. The faint hum of machinery in the distance was the only sound that accompanied their steady breathing. Rhea stood at the forefront, her eyes scanning the dimly lit chamber, every instinct tightened, every muscle prepared for what came next. She felt the weight of responsibility settle heavier on her shoulders. She wasn't just leading a mission anymore, she was leading the survival of humanity's finest against an enemy unlike any other. The Zaylons were relentless, and now, as her team stood in the heart of their territory, the stakes couldn't have been higher. "They're close," Rhea murmured, her voice low but steady. "We've got one chance. If we don't take it now, we'll be surrounded. Understand?" Aiden shifted nervously behind her. His pulse raced in his ears, the echo of Rhea's words pounding through his head. He had seen his share of battles, but this felt different. The Zaylons weren't just invaders, they were a force of nature. Intelligent. Precise. Almost as if they could anticipate every move. "We can do this," Nadia said, her voice steady but sharp. She wasn't trying to reassure them, she was simply stating a fact. It was the kind of confidence that only years of combat could forge. "We've trained for this." Aiden nodded, though a gnawing doubt lingered in his gut. The sense of claustrophobia in the tunnels, the suffocating silence of waiting, it all seemed to press down on him like a physical weight. He wanted to move, to fight, but the longer they stood there, the more the tension built. "Where are they?" Aiden asked, breaking the silence. His words were clipped, his frustration palpable. His fingers twitched, itching for action. Rhea's eyes flicked to a small, glowing readout on her wrist. She didn't need to say anything, Aiden already knew. They had triangulated the Zaylon forces. They were close. Too close. And the faint vibrations in the ground only confirmed it. They were almost here. "Hold position," Rhea ordered. "Get ready." As if on cue, the distant hum grew louder, and then, the unmistakable shriek of the Zaylon war machines echoed through the tunnels. The sound was bone-chilling, a high-pitched wail that seemed to reverberate through the very walls. Aiden's breath caught in his throat. He knew what came next. "Take cover!" Rhea barked. The team dove for shelter behind the jagged remnants of mining equipment and rocks strewn across the tunnel floor. Aiden's pulse thundered in his chest as his heart raced to keep pace with the growing sounds of the Zaylon advance. His fingers tightened around his weapon, the weight of it both familiar and foreign in his hands. The time for hesitation was over. A bright flash lit up the chamber as a blast of plasma tore through the darkness, narrowly missing them by mere inches. The explosion sent a shockwave through the tunnel, rattling the walls and knocking Aiden off balance. He scrambled to his feet, his breath ragged as the realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The Zalons had arrived. The first wave of attackers surged forward, their armored forms silhouetted against the glowing orange of their weapons. They were monstrous, their insectoid features twisted and alien, their movements precise and coordinated. Aiden's stomach twisted. He had seen images of them before, but seeing them up close was something else entirely. Focus! Ria's command cut through the rising panic. Take them down. Move, move, move. Nadia was the first to respond, her gun raised and her aim deadly. With a single pull of the trigger, she took down one of the advancing Zalons, her shot true and efficient. But there were too many. The others swarmed forward, the ground shaking beneath their feet as the massive war machines began to dig into the walls, creating new paths of attack. Aiden fired, his first shot missing its target, but the second struck true, taking down another Zalon. His heart was in his throat, and he could feel the weight of the battle bearing down on him, but there was no room for hesitation. He fired again, and again, his movements instinctual, the training taking over. But it wasn't enough. The ground trembled as the Zalon war machines, their large mechanical legs clanking against the stone floor, charged into the fray. One of them lurched toward Ria, and Aiden's stomach sank as he saw her move into its path. Ria! No! Aiden shouted, panic rising in his chest. Ria's eyes locked onto him for a split second, a brief flicker of something deep in her gaze. It was determination. It was sacrifice. Get to the exit, she yelled. I'll hold them off. Aiden froze for a moment, his mind screaming, but before he could react, Ria hurled herself at the war machine, her weapon raised. She fired, striking its vulnerable point, but it wasn't enough. The machine's massive claw slammed into her, sending her hurtling to the ground. No! Aiden gasped. But there was no time. Nadia grabbed his arm and yanked him backward. We have to go, now, she snapped. With his heart in his throat, Aiden turned away from Ria, the screams of battle echoing in his ears as they sprinted toward the exit. They had one chance to survive this. And as they ran, the weight of Ria's sacrifice haunted every step they took. The war was far from over.